I think a lot of sustainable solutions are profitable, are driving optimization, are driving more elegant solutions, and I think Gen Z has gotten that.
Katherine Sizov, co-founder of Strella. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are solving a problem that I feel like so many people run into, which is you walk into a grocery store and none of the produce is the perfect ripeness, or you like buy it, take it home, and the next day it's already rotten. Can you tell me a little bit about what Strella does and how you are attempting to solve this very, very annoying problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, 40% of food is wasted before it's consumed. And on top of that, there are quality issues that we all experience on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to solve that problem, and I have a biology background. So the first thing I thought was, can we add a little bit more data into this process? So at Strella, what we do is we predict the shelf life of produce items and other perishable products, and we use that data to make better supply chain decisions.
It's such an important issue right now, especially as it comes to like sustainability factors and, like you said, just waste and convenience for people's lives. What initially pushed you in the direction of building a company in this industry?
It was that metric. I wanted to go to grad school, but then something about it wasn't really like striking my fancy. So I started reading about things that I thought were interesting. And then I read that crazy stat, 40% of food is wasted. And that kind of hit me in a couple different ways. Like, first of all, I didn't even know where my food came from at the time. So I went straight to the grocery store, started asking weird questions to the people who worked there. And then that led to a really big rabbit hole that eventually turned into Strella.
For people who are not familiar with the produce supply chain, can you give us a rundown of like exactly how it works today and then where you and Strella come into the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course you've got farmers who grow and produce fruits and vegetables. That usually gets aggregated into the packing and distribution phase of the food supply chain. So that's where we come in. We deal with post-harvest or supply chain solutions. I'll give you an example. An apple in a grocery store can be a year old by the time it gets there. So apples are stored in these giant storage rooms. And right now there kind of isn't like really any data about which apple can store for a long time and which apple can't. So we created a sensor technology coupled with some machine vision and supply chain insights that allow us to predict which apple is the most ripe one and then help the packer, in this case, make a decision about what inventory to move first.
Okay, cool. So you are basically telling them like when to move the apple, for instance, like to the shelves that people will then buy at the grocery store?
And we deal with like huge volumes. So we're talking about like millions of apples at once.
How do you go about finding this data for each different like bit of produce? Because I assume like a banana is very different from an apple, is very different from a tomato or whatever it is. What is the process like on your end from like a tech side to be able to accurately predict those things?
Yeah, there's some like physiological similarities. So for example, a lot of fruits and vegetables produce a hormone called ethylene. And so what we can do by measuring ethylene gas is to understand a whole variety of different fruits and vegetables. But some will have more ethylene production and some will have less. So for example, kiwi are actually super sensitive to ethylene, and so they're kind of the gold standard for us when it comes to that input. We also look at stuff like machine vision, so you can see a banana changing color and you can tell it's getting more mature. And that's just one input that helps us understand what the maturity of the product is.
And what exactly are you bringing into the supply chain, like, machinery wise? Is it like the physical sensor that you're putting onto the conveyor belt, or what does it look like in a like very tangible sense?
One of our cores is a sensor or a device. It's about the size of a brick, and you can put that in multiple supply chain environments, and it's going to measure those hormones alongside other environmental factors that are really important for produce. That's a really big input for us. We also put cameras and other types of things all up and down the supply chain to collect the data we need. So giving you an example with bananas, we ripen bananas, and what we do is we place our sensors in what are called banana ripening rooms. And then we basically watch the bananas go from green to yellow in this ripening room. So we do that with vision, and then we also do that with those plant hormones. And then we automatically adjust the conditions of the ripening room to get a perfect yellow banana at the store shelf every time.
So the supply chain has been a really big issue since especially COVID, when so many industries really joined this conversation about the challenges and, the complaints about how the supply chain currently exists. What are you seeing? Are there roadblocks that you're coming up against or any big challenges within the supply chain at large?
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID kind of opened our eyes to the fact that stores don't necessarily have to have their shelves stocked, right? And food is obviously a really big part of that. There have been so many challenges in the food and ag industry in the entire time that I've worked in it, whether it's importer export markets being challenging, whether it's difficult crop environments, right? We've got some weather changes going on that really affect the climate and resultingly the product. So there's just been a whole slew of things. I think on top of that, like from an investment standpoint, food and ag is a pretty unique thing, right? It takes 5 years for fruit to grow on a tree. And so it's one of those like slow, patient capital experiences that I think is a little bit not traditional or not super common to see today.
And do most people that you're working with understand that like this is going to take a long time and this process that you're working with and is taking so long, especially investors that oftentimes like, they don't want it to be a super long process always. What have those conversations looked like?
Yeah, I'd say outside the industry can be challenging. I think in food and ag, it is a labor of love at the end of the day, and you have to have some passion in order to really truly understand why people farm fruit today, despite all these difficult circumstances. But I think at the end of the day, people understand that food is like a pivotal industry, right? Despite all of its hardships, it's one of those things that really needs to have some kind of innovation.
What has it meant for you guys to build this technology? Like, what does the team look like? What are the steps that you guys have had to take to ensure that, and especially with like so many changes within AI, within these emerging technologies right now, how have you guys gone about like actually creating the technology that works?
Yeah, we're a pretty nerdy team, and I call us like full stack in a very real way. So we've got like electrochemists who work on our sensor fabrication. We've got post-harvest physiologists who know all about produce and how it works. Then we've got devs and data scientists and mechanical engineers. So it's a lot of different types of technology. But then on top of that, you really need the context for food and ag. And so we have a lot of people who are like born and bred in the produce industry who really understand like how decisions are made today and can speak with their customers about the technology.
How big is your team?
We're 27 people right now.
And I assume that that has been gradual over time to build that team. What kind of like steps did you take to ensure like, the first step is to build the technology, the second is to like either outsource it or whatever it is. What was the kind of journey and timeline like?
Yeah, I'd say it's like just picking the battles, like the biggest problem on day one, So the first thing was getting a good input into the model, right? Now we're working on refining the models or using the amount of data that we've collected to make the model better. So I think it's just figuring out exactly what I can do today to make tomorrow better and just building towards that.
Did you always want to be a CEO?
Not really. I wanted to go to grad school for neuroscience, but I just couldn't sit behind a lab bench for like another 8 years, So.
What's been the biggest challenge as you're leading this company?
People are always the biggest challenge, but also the most rewarding part of it. They're not predictable. It's always people, but yeah, like I said, that's always my favorite part of it too.
Yeah. In terms of how much has changed in technology so fast, what are you expecting to be able to either do in the future? What are your goals in terms of like how far and wide you can grow Strella in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think in terms of technology, doing more with less is the name of the game. So you can have a small team that knows how to use a lot of different kinds of tooling in order to create a pretty big impact. And that's also the reason I really like working in food because, yeah, you can make an impact on 20 billion pounds of apples, and things like that.
In terms of then growing through the financial side of things, you guys have around 19 million in funding, correct? What has that funding journey looked like? What's the pitch that you're giving to investors? What has the feedback been from them?
Yeah, so we've mostly gone through a Series A is the last round that we did. We raised from generalist VCs. So I'd say we typically stay away from any kind of sustainability focus or anything like that. It's really all about what kind of margins we can drive, what kind of benefit we can bring to the customer. And it's very, very business focused at the end of the day.
How come? Why do you stay away from that other, types of industries that could be very relevant for what you guys are building?
I would just say like on the sustainability side, I think as much as I do it for the sustainability piece myself, and that's what keeps me going to sleep at night. I don't necessarily know if like traditional venture capital has really caught up to that message. So I think when I pitch to investors and things like that, the focus really is on a business that makes sense.
What's your best piece of advice for other founders that might be in an intersection like that? Like, how did you find the right messaging to say, like, this is the company that I want to build and the reasons that I want to build it without focusing too much on maybe the keywords that investors aren't going to get?
Yeah, I think it's, once again, just turning it into like a business that makes sense, right? So, for example, food waste is something that, of course, matters from a sustainability perspective, but it's also super not profitable, right? So when I go to my customers, I don't really necessarily talk about sustainability. I talk about what kind of ROI I can bring to the table and how reducing shrink is great for their bottom line. And I do the same type of thing for my investors.
So let's talk about those customers. You guys work with multiple different enterprises around the country. How did you broker those partnerships? What has that experience been like?
Super old-fashioned. Our industry is very like you have to meet people in person, get to know them. It's, if you imagine food and agriculture, it kind of is what you would expect it to be. So no magic there. It's just, slowly building relationships over time.
What do you tell them to ensure that they know that you're the right fit for them as well as they're the right fit for you? How does that relationship work?
I think it's usually just having a conversation and trying to approach it as a partner. So, we have a technology, we have a solution, but really understanding what problems they're trying to solve. Hey, my tomatoes are having a lot of issues on my store floor, or man, I keep getting dinged on my bananas, or the CEO of this company keeps texting me because his wife's unhappy about the bananas. So just understanding what their problems are and then seeing if our technology is a good fit for that.
Yeah, totally. So you're based in Seattle. You said you have to be around the apples of the world. How does the different locations that you are working within impact how you guys are offering your services? Is it different based on location around the country?
Yeah, we currently operate in 26 different countries. I would say in general, apples are apples, right? There are different varieties and stuff like that, and people have different feelings about them and what they like. But for the most part, our technology can be applied to all different types of fruit and vegetables, and in the future, other perishables as well.
What about the relationships, though, working, like you said, within multiple different countries? Are people across the world looking for different things from you guys? Or how has maybe the different markets impacted how you guys tell your story or what you really are offering to them?
I think the core value proposition remains the same typically, but there are always adjustments to be made. For example, Europe does care a lot more about sustainability, so that's something that we can lean into a little bit more. The US is very optimization focused, so we like to talk about that more in the States. But for the most part, I would say the industry is kind of the same everywhere.
In terms of generations, I feel like our generation, Gen Z, younger, is really focused on sustainability and much more than other generations have been. But I think a lot of people don't exactly know where to start or know what to do to make the impact that they hope to make. How has Gen Z and that generation's kind of newfound focus on sustainability impacted what you're building?
I think it's really important to focus on these things. And I think there's a huge misconception that people have had previously that sustainability means you're doing something out of goodwill or sustainability isn't profitable. But I think that's super untrue. I think a lot of sustainable solutions are profitable, are driving optimization, are driving more elegant solutions in whatever industry you operate in. And I think Gen Z has gotten that.
Totally. How has the increase of AI changed what you're able to offer, how fast you're able to offer it? What's been the biggest benefit to incorporating more of these technologies into your services?
I think the biggest benefit of AI has been that 0 to 1. So bringing out some MVP or a prototype, it takes hours or days as opposed to building up your own native models. So I think that's been really helpful, doing market research, understanding what the customer needs are, throwing, a basic product at them and see how they react has been really, really useful.
Going back to when you first started the company, what were some of the initial steps that you took to really put this plan into action? I think, so many young founders today might have an idea or be going to the grocery store and being annoyed about something, but taking it from similarly 0 to 1 or an idea to a company is a very large margin. What were those first couple steps that you took to put that into action?
I think a big part of it was trying to calendar some things in for myself. So for example, I did a lot of pitch competitions or business plan competitions where I had a deadline. So it was oh man, I have to present a pitch deck next week. I can't look totally stupid, So that would drive me to do stuff kind of I was in college at the time. Homework helps you get stuff done, So I assigned myself homework in order to be able to keep pushing the ball along for myself.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
I feel like every day I'm like, oh my gosh, this would have been easier now that hindsight's 2020. But I also feel like I made a lot of lucky mistakes. And I also just think that when you're like young and naive and haven't tried something before, like that's a great thing. Like beginner's mind, as they call it in Zen, is like a great thing. So I don't necessarily like, I wouldn't have done it any differently if that makes sense.
It definitely does. What's your best piece of advice for other young female founders today, especially approaching industries like manufacturing or technology that's so male dominated? How have you gone about it? What would you advise other young women to do today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like just showing up as your authentic self. I know that sounds a little corny, but yeah, just kind of demonstrating that you care about what you're working on and you're here to hopefully make a positive impact goes a really long way for people.
Who are some of your competitors today?
So we have a number of different competitors, I guess I would say. Although one thing to caveat is food waste is such a big problem that I think there should be like a whole suite of solutions in order to address it. One competitor is chemicals that you can apply to produce in order to extend their shelf life. So we oftentimes compete for the same checks. I will say we do work in complement to them, but sometimes there is some competitiveness there.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, how do you continue to stand out or like put yourself forward in those positions or collaborate with other companies? What has that process looked like?
I think a big piece of our differentiation is our ability to change and move very quickly. So we're still a pretty small team, and we pride ourselves in being innovative. We pride ourselves in hearing what the customer has to say, and so we can make a lot of different adjustments to our products for the customer. And then I think also, like going back to the chemicals thing, I generally prefer, food is food. It grows the way it grows, and we can work our way around the supply chain and make it better and improve the process itself rather than necessarily touching the food itself.
As part of this under 30 community, so much of it is focused on youth and youthfulness. How has youth or coming in with such like fresh eyes impacted your ability to grow and innovate? You mentioned that like that's the name of the game for your team, but what has like your age meant for your career so far?
Yeah, I guess I don't have a control group, so I couldn't necessarily tell you. I will say food and ag does tend to trend a little bit towards the older side. And so sometimes bright-eyed and bushy-tailed people coming in to meetings about technology is fairly unique. But I think a big part in my industry is making sure that I learn and respect and understand what the previous generation has brought to the table and incorporate that into the next generation of solutions.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. You mentioned before too that you have taken feedback from what your customers want, I'm sure from your investors as well. What has been like some point of feedback that you feel like has really either caused you guys to pivot or like really impacted how you are offering what you're offering today?
I think a big part is to be able to see what we're doing. So, adjusting the inventory of apples is cool, and seeing like food waste reduction is cool. But having like a platform where people can actually touch it and deal with it, is very important, because an algorithm is sometimes not something that people can intuitively understand, even if it does bring value to a business.
And in practice today, is that through the sensors, or are there other ways that you guys are encouraging your customers to like really get hands-on with the process?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different stuff. So like, for example, we have a little app that allows you to snap a photo of a banana in a store, and it will tell you like how ripe this banana is and whether it's on target or off target. We do other things like performance dashboarding, so showing people who care, stakeholders, like how we are ripening bananas and what our performance has been over the couple of weeks that we've last seen. So yeah, I think a big part is just creating like visualizations for the customer in order to understand what it is that we're doing in the background.
Any plans to make that app available to the general public? Because I feel like so many individual consumers could really benefit from like snapping a picture and understanding so much more about what they're about to buy.
Yeah, I'll work on creating a link, and I'll put it in our website. But I'm not a B2C girly, I'm B2B, enterprise B2B.
No, that's so fair. It's a totally different tree to bark up for sure. My last question for you is, as you're moving into the future, obviously so much is changing within the industry right now. What is one prediction you have about where this industry is going, or something a trend that you might be trying to get ahead of right now?
Yeah, I believe a lot of the food supply chain is going to be automated. So right now, you'll hear it all the time that the food supply chain is held together by people who really care, who have a lot of experience in a very niche subject matter. So for example, there's a job called a banana ripener, and this person like peels the peel from the pulp or measures latex flow and like feels the banana, bees the banana in order to get it to the right color. And the entire food supply chain is very much like that. And I think in the future, we won't necessarily have that kind of expertise at the table. And so we need to learn how to automate that process and make it more consistent.
Yeah, that's super important. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see all that you guys do and all the bananas that you guys save from being thrown in the trash. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.